Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no copay. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that. But we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Really quickly, summer's coming to a close, and now we got to start worrying about the holidays and all that kind of stuff on the horizon. But I just want to take a moment and thank my sponsors, keto-mojo.com. It's a great website. If you have a chance to go check out Keto Mojo, that is my go-to for blood ketone levels and sugar checking to double check our continuous glucose monitors. They have a wealth of information there, just tons of fitness advice, nutrition advice, you name it. Go check it out. They have a ton of great lectures there that they've stored over the years. And it really is a great supplement to whatever you're listening to now, just for education. And then, of course, Health Code, Get Health, GETHLTH.com. They're doing great work, and they have vegan offerings for those who choose to go that plant-based route. Also, their traditional chocolate and vanilla shakes are amazing. So go check out Get Health, GETHLTH.com. Discount code METHEALTH, METHEALTH. And also you can find out some of their offerings as far as education. Also, they have a great website with tons of recipes and, to get you through the rest of the summer, some great ideas. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Today, I've got a good guy, man. This is a guy that Tro and I had the opportunity to interview, and then we run into each other at conferences, and it's always so crazy. We never get time to sit and chit chat. So now's our opportunity. I think we're going to be stuck with each other for about 2 or 3 hours over your podcast and my podcast. Casey Ruff, welcome, man. So great to have you.
Thank you so very much. Such an honor to be here. I love your show.
Boundless Body.
Boundless Body. Yeah.
Training.
Yep.
Podcast.
Yeah, my wife and I were working for a big corporate gym when the shutdown happened. So the pandemic closed the club and we were unemployed. And so that summer we decided to start our own business. And that's what Boundless Body is. My wife came up with the name Boundless Body. I immediately loved it. And then a few months later, we started the podcast. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It looks like you might have married up too, man. I think we might be in the same boat.
You definitely married up. I definitely married up.
Yeah, everyone says, why is that? I hear that everywhere I go, man. You married up. You married up. You outkicked your coverage.
You outkicked your coverage. One of my favorite. It was so awesome. This last weekend, you and I, at the time of this recording, you and I were both at the Symposium for Metabolic Health, hosted by Low Carb USA and Doug Reynolds and Pam Devine. And what an amazing conference that was. And it was so great. I saw you interacting with your wife, and I knew I had to meet her. And we actually got to sit down and chat for a good 45 minutes, hour, and got to hear her story. And behind every great man is somebody there to support, and Linnell was definitely that for you. And I loved chatting with her, and I'm honored that she would come on our show here in the future. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, I don't know how much I'm looking forward to, but I know she's stressed out, man. She's like, oh my gosh, I had to beg her to come on my podcast. But yeah, she's an amazing person. Like you're gonna enjoy your time with her. I know she's sitting talking to you. She's talking to Chafee. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I like, people are distracting me, and my wife's getting free with all these good-looking guys around.
Dude, she was so dialed into you. You have nothing.
I know. I'm pretty confident. Yeah, I'm pretty confident in that. Yeah.
Not to mention, you're a much better-looking guy than I am, anyway. So.
Yeah, right, man. Right. I want to have Boundless Body like you one of these days. But the thing I love about you is you seem like such a grounded guy. Like so many people in this space and that I run into are very self-promoting, very like bigger than life. Like they're bouncing off the walls, like, "Hey, we're gonna motivate you. We're gonna do," and you're like yourself and you're chill and you get in it. And I think I always think, man, you would be such a great trainer for someone who's really struggling with their, self-confidence or, feeling like they can't do these things. I think you have that compassion element that's so important in being grounded and not just this really super high energy.
Mm. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. You have to kind of know your clients, obviously, and know what they need to get motivated. But I've been a trainer since March of 2007, so it's been a good 17 plus years that I've been doing this. And being in the fitness industry, the nutrition industry, you realize it is an industry and it is a business. And again, the big corporation that I was working for before was highly competitive, 100% commission, people selling supplements and big packages and lots of like big sexy things that people would buy and eventually fail at. And I don't know, it's never really been my favorite thing about the industry. And I've always just found that if I stick to my core values and just treat people, with respect and price our services fairly and work with people any way that we can, the business seems to kind of take care of itself. And I don't really need to stress out about, the money coming in or whatever. Even though our business, it goes up and down and clients drop out or move or things change, but at the end of the day, I think if you do right by the person you're serving, everything just kind of tends to sort itself out.
Yeah, and stepping back, what made you go into training? Like what was your motivator? What got you going?
Yeah, man. So initially I was studying architecture in college. I was working at a local bike shop, and this gym opened up, and I signed up for the gym. It was expensive at the time. I was just I just started going to this gym to get some training in the off season for cycling. And as I was going to this gym, I was observing the personal trainers and seeing what they were doing. And they were working with their clients and helping them through exercise. I had worked at a gym in high school and always been interested in kind of fitness myself, but never really intended to be a personal trainer. And one thing that really drew me in as well is they were using heart rate monitors, which I had used for many, many years prior to joining the gym. And I knew a lot about heart rate monitors. And so I went into the personal trainer and manager's office to see what I could do to get a job. Again, my career I thought was going to be in architecture. I just wanted a stopgap or something I could do that was a little different than working at a bike shop. And he told me what certification to get. And I spent the next few months and hit the books and went out and got it and was hired on and immediately knew more about heart rate and heart rate training than the other trainers. So I was able to help teach them and get them up to speed. And then later I was trained in using what is called a metabolic cart. If you recall, during the metabolic or the symposium for metabolic health, Ben Bokikio was talking a little bit about metabolic carts and respiratory quotient. So basically, I was measuring respiration on people, whether they were resting, doing nothing, or whether they were being ramped up during exercise, like a VO2 max test. And by collecting people's respirations, we're able to tell how many calories that people were burning, and also how people are oxidizing the two different fuel sources, fat and carbohydrates. And so that's kind of where my specialty lied. Eventually, I got a regional position where I was training people all over the Western United States and how to use these metabolic carts, interpret the results, and help translate that to the members of the clubs that we were working at. So that's kind of what drew me in. Again, I never intended this to be my career, but it's 17 and a half years later, and I absolutely love what I do and have no intention of stopping soon.
Yeah, what are your favorite clients? Like who's the
Oh,
patient
man.
or the person? To me, it's patients, but clients that you go, man, I could really help this person.
That's a great question. It's cool. You start as a personal trainer and you think you're going to be working with a bunch of athletes. Like my very first client ever was a former AAA baseball player, and you kind of think that's going to be your clientele. And soon enough, you realize it's stay-at-home moms, it's busy professionals. It could be 15-year-old kids that are training for motocross, or 80-year-olds who are retired. So it's really across the board. I would say just in general, somebody that's willing to um, listen to our advice. I think you understand very well that the space that we have gotten into is quite unconventional. It's different. It's a different message than what a lot of people hear. And so it can be a little awkward trying to present this information to people. But as long as somebody has kind of gone through the ringer and has tried the conventional wisdom about workouts or health or the medical system or whatever, like until they go through that and realize it doesn't really work, I think those people end up ready to hear different information. That's my favorite kind of person to work with. Somebody who is sick of being sick, is sick of being lied to, is sick of being, treated poorly or not listened to, and is willing to try something different.
Yeah, and I think I just see that a lot where kind of like what you're saying is people go, this way I've always done it. Yeah, but it's not working. You got to change something, and to put their trust in you. Okay, this is a big deal to me, and I'm paying you to do this. And sometimes I find some people just don't want to change what they're doing, and it's not a good fit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. We get a lot of people who've done workout programs in the past that generally involve them burning lots of calories. Maybe they're running or they're, jumping around in a gym or, um, you know, doing a lot of stuff that burns a lot of calories. And typically people pair that with a diet where they're eating less calories all the time. And people don't realize that kind of pattern that works initially for weight loss will slowly slow down and plateau eventually, when their body kind of compensates. And what they're doing in actuality is creating the eventual weight gain that they're going to experience. And so it's frustrating for them because they think they're doing the very best thing. It works in the beginning and then it slows down and stops, and people feel tired and cold and they have cravings and they don't understand why they're motivated at the beginning of the week and less motivated at the end of the week. All the while, everything they're doing is bringing that metabolic rate down. And so this is what I was measuring using those metabolic carts: is how many calories can you burn just being yourself and at rest. And people that would do a lot of workouts burning tons of calories and then do diets where they were restricting their calories, they would just tank their metabolic rates and teach their bodies to burn less and less and less calories all the time. It was really unfortunate. In fact, one of my favorites was, one woman came in to get tested. She had just been kicked off the Biggest Loser contest. And so we set her down and measured her, and based on her demographic of her age, height, weight, and gender, at rest, she should have been burning about 2,000 calories. And in actuality, she was burning about 1,000 calories. So after doing this program of doing like 6 hours of workouts and eating 1,200 calories a day, she had just completely crushed her innate ability to burn calories, which then backfires and causes all the weight gain. Which is why we've never seen the Biggest Loser success tour season 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. That's a sad truth. You could do it for the short term, but our body is going to say, "Look, you want to survive," and it's going to slow everything down. And just weight loss by itself slows your metabolic rate. If you're carrying around 20 extra pounds or 40 extra pounds all the time, and then you're not carrying that weight anymore, you're not burning as many calories, right?
Yep.
Just by the nature of weight loss.
Yep, exactly. And now, if you can lose weight the correct way, you can definitely like try to maintain your metabolic rate, or even if you're adding muscle, you might be able to increase your metabolic rate as well. One interesting thing that I was noticing that kind of brought me into the low carbohydrate space was when people started eating more fat and started restricting their carbohydrates. We did notice that their resting metabolic rate was going up by a few hundred calories, which is pretty cool. But what I noticed when people were doing fasting, intermittent fasting, people would not be eating for certain periods of time, and their metabolic rates, the number of calories that they were burning at rest, would go up by like 500, 600, 700 calories every single day. And it was blowing my mind because I'm like, well, these people they're not eating as many calories, but they're not the same as the people that are calorie restricting, who are dropping their metabolic rate. In fact, these guys are increasing their metabolic rate. What is going on? And I mean, I think you and I have a soft spot in our hearts for Dr. Jason Fung and his work, which really was the first time I understood what fasting did to metabolism, how it doesn't decrease it, it actually increases it and helps you burn more calories on your own all the time. It was actually so wonderful to like learn about this stuff. And I thank Dr. Jason Fung for his work and bringing that to light, because that was really breaking my brain to try to figure out at the time.
Yeah, it was like when I heard about him, I go, this guy's right. I'm gonna be so mad because I was eating Melba toast and rice crackers and all that kind of stuff, green shakes every morning. I was I go, I'm gonna do the right thing, and my sugars are going higher. I'm feeling worse. And then when he came along, one of my patients had lost 40 pounds. I'm like, what the heck are you doing? He goes, like 2 days a week, I fast. I was like, well, that's got to shut your metabolism down, right? Like, remember they say if you skip breakfast, you're gonna die. You're gonna go into like panic mode or starvation mode. And most of us have enough fat in our bodies where that's really not an issue.
Yeah, that's such a great point. On the report that we would give people after they completed one of these assessments, it would show a human and it would show carbohydrates and fat. And the number for carbohydrates would be the number of calories that that person could store. And for most men, that number would be about 2,000 calories. For most females, that would be about 1,500 calories, which is to say we just don't store very many calories from carbohydrates. Like, men have a little bit more muscle tissue, which is one of the locations that we can store carbohydrates, and that's why the potential difference might be there. but that's not very many calories of carbohydrates that we can store. When you think that at any given time with, 5 to 6 liters of blood circulating around, we only have a teaspoon of sugar in circulation. And when that gets up to like a teaspoon and a half, that's like raging type 2 diabetes. It's really not a lot of that fuel source. And if anybody knows, if you go out and do a run or a bike ride where you didn't eat before and you're going really hard and maybe breathing in and out through your mouth, and all of a sudden you run out, that's just simply your body running out of those carbohydrates all of a sudden, where the second number would be the number of calories of fat that we store. And even if it was somebody that was very lean, maybe they didn't weigh very much or have very much fat on their body, it would still be tens of thousands of calories of fat. And if somebody did, was overweight, was obese, that number could be 300,000, 400,000, 500,000, like tons and tons and tons of calories that could be used for energy in the body. And it's only when we are consuming high amounts of carbohydrates that we have a high insulin response, which keeps those calories locked in and trapped away. And it's like, if people understood that we walk around with so many calories from fat that we could burn off, if we just create the right conditions, the body can take care of itself. And it does quite a nice job running on those fat calories and manages itself. So I love that you mentioned the difference between those two fuel sources, because the difference between the two is vast, hugely different.
Yeah, and the difference may be, in a fasting state, that's the thing that's going to lower your insulin the most. So a lot of us who've yo-yo dieted, who've gained weight, our insulin's going to be high naturally, like when you have a high insulin. So the best way to lower insulin is fasting, and that's why a lot of people on the low carb, carnivore, keto bandwagon, they're when their insulin's really low in the morning, their sugars go up and they freak out, and you go, don't worry, your body is preparing you for the day, right? Your insulin, I don't really care what the sugar's doing unless it's like super high and diabetic. But if your body's allowing you to release that extra energy to burn, that's all good, right? You got more fuels to burn. You don't have to be carb loading all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why a lot of people notice in this world, in this space, when they start eating the right foods, they're just naturally like not that hungry. And they can fast quite effortlessly without that hunger that I would normally feel. I grew up in a religion, the same religion that Dr. Ben Bickman is in, the LDS faith. And every month we would have a fast, and we would fast for 24 hours. And it's like you would spend that one day so utterly miserable and so hungry. And then you'd go the next like 29 days only thinking about the next time that you'd have to do it. And you're already miserable thinking about the next time you had to fast. And it's so interesting. Now you consume the right foods, you get people on a lot of proteins and fats and try to limit carbohydrates. They feel satiated, maybe for the first time ever in their lives. And to start fasting is really effortless. You just don't feel that hungry. And so you don't really need to eat. And in that state, yeah, your body has access to all that fat because that insulin drops. You can use that as a fuel source without feeling the hunger. It's so easy. I mean, you know what it's like now to go 24 hours without food. And it's like you might get a little hungry in your stomach every now and again, but it passes and it's fine. Like it's a totally different experience.
And you raised a huge point. And like in the Christian church, right? People want to fast, like they don't fast anymore. Why? Because it's so brutal. If you're eating cookies and donuts one day and your insulin's super high and you try fasting, your body, that high insulin doesn't let you get your fat stores. You have no sugar coming in that your body's used to, and it's a penance rather than growing closer to God. But when someone's been metabolically healthy, they go, okay, I can't eat, no biggie. Like they're not,
Yeah.
it's like a panic situation anymore. Like it's a calming effect.
Yeah, totally. That's great way to describe it. I remember one in particular. I served a mission in Brazil for 2 years for the church, and one Sunday in particular, I remember feeling so lightheaded, I could barely walk, and it was hot, and I was sweating, and it was just absolutely awful. But yeah, it's so much better to feel that clean energy that's just coming from inside the body, and it's amazing too. I've noticed also over time that when people are in the fasted state, they end up preferring to do workouts and exercise and move in that state. Like when I play ice hockey, it's usually like a little bit later in the day, and it's really high intensity skating really quick for an hour and a half. And I prefer to do it in the fasted state. I try not to eat breakfast or lunch that day and be fully fasted for a good 20 hours. And I feel way better in that state than I do in the fed state. You just think you need food. You think you have to have all the snacks, or you're just going to like keel over and die without food constantly coming in and the snacks and all this stuff. But when you learn how to burn that stored fat, you're carrying with you the energy that you need, and you don't need any of that stuff. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, it's so ingrained in our mind. One of my patients, it was so interesting because there's a normal way we gain, like, every winter people gain weight during the holidays. They get lazy and they get, grandma's cookies or whatever. Then they start to get, in January, they start getting back in shape and they'll start losing weight and doing this stuff. But I had a guy every summer, he would gain like 40 pounds. In the winter, he would lose a ton of weight. I'm like, what the heck? You're like the opposite of every patient I've ever seen. And he said, well, it's because I ride my bike all the time in the summer. I said, shouldn't you be losing weight? Like, you should be losing weight in the summer then. But what he does is he would carb load for his long bike rides. Like he would go on, 100-mile bike rides and he would weigh carb load over what he was burning. And then in the winter, he said, well, I'm not riding my bike because it's too cold and snowy outside. So he would cut back on his carbohydrates and lose weight again. You got like this. So once we convinced him with a continuous glucose monitor that once he got fat adapted, when he rode his bike, his sugars went higher than ever when he was going up the biggest hills or the most demand. His body was kicking out so much sugar, it was overshooting what he actually needed. So he realized he didn't need to take in sugars, and his friends could not believe what he was doing and performing at such a better level with no carbs when he was riding
Oh
these
man.
very long, tedious bike rides.
It's such a game changer. The first time I learned about fat adaptation was in 2012, and a consultant was using the same metabolic carts that we were using, but he was training high-end triathletes, people that would compete in Ironman at the top levels. And he was talking about how he would feed them butter and bacon and cream, and they wouldn't need to take in as many calories as they were riding. And I'd been a competitive cyclist for several years before then, and I knew you had to carbo load before, and you have the oatmeal and the banana, and you stuff your jersey pockets full of
Goo and all that
all
too,
the
right?
all the stuff. Oh yeah,
Gels.
all the gels and the blocks, and your stomach just hurts the whole time. Our Sunday team ride, we would ride out about an hour and a half at a pretty quick tempo in a certain direction. Everybody would stop at a gas station, and I would buy 2 packs of the red package. I think they were the Grandma Sycamore's double chocolate cookies, and I would just throw both of those down the hatch. And you would need to do that because you were burning through so much of that sugar that we mentioned earlier. You just don't store very much of it. When I started learning this other way of doing things, they're like, wait a second, I could teach my body to use fat as fuel. Man, you can go out for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. You don't even think about food. You don't take anything with you, maybe a bottle of some electrolytes or something. But even then, it's just so much easier. You feel way better. You have all the energy you need. It's infinitely better than the way we were doing it before, for sure.
Yeah, it's such a hard paradigm to shift, right? Because it's so ingrained. And Tim Noakes, who was the first guy talking about all this stuff, had reversed himself, and then people say he's crazy now.
Yeah.
But now he has all these athletes who are performing doing crazy things that none of us would really want to do. But it's amazing what the body can accomplish on its own, and we have to get out of the way sometimes.
Yeah, we talk about it with everyday people who are trying to perform in whatever capacity in their own life. So we also have Dr. Chafee's presentation this weekend was all about athletes, and they have to perform at the highest levels. And again, there's a lot of endurance athletes that understand that burning fat is a much better way to go for endurance sport. But it's also quite surprising to see that there are a lot of people that are training in the highest levels at really high speeds and what would normally be thought of as really glycolytic type exercises that are burning tons of sugar, and they still do fine with burning fat at really, really high levels. And something that Dr. Chafee said really stood out to me is like some of these athletes feel like when they have that hunger, they get sharper, they get more tuned in, they're ready for the hunt and the kill. And that makes perfect sense if you think of how we would have evolved. Like if we just got weaker and more sedentary with less and less food, they would make it less likely that we'd ever be able to find food. And so I thought that was a really, really good point. And yeah, I'm really grateful to see this message kind of getting out there more, and seeing more athletes finding this as well really helps move the message forward.
Yeah, and it's hard sometimes within a community. Like you could see in the carnivore community now, there's some that are going more towards, having adding in fruits and honey and things like that. Other ones are saying no, you just have to do, but you have to add in the organ meats. And so there's and all these guys look healthy to me. So I'm like, I don't know, like, but I think if you're someone like Paul Saladino, if you're super fit, healthy, like a guy like you who's lean and muscular, and like you can get away with way more carbs than someone who's 250 pounds sitting at their desk all day, and sugar's 400.
It's a great point. And yeah, I've been carnivore for 5.5 years now. I got certified first productive thing I did after the pandemic and after we were unemployed was get certified to coach people on the carnivore diet through Sean Baker's website, which was called Meat RX at the time. I got to meet people all over the world and help coach them, which was really fun. But anyway, I talk to a lot of people, and that's one of the most common questions is you see some carnivores who have to remain very strict and other carnivores who can introduce, lots of fruits and vegetables. And reportedly, Dr. Saladino is eating several hundred grams of fruit and fruit juice and all kinds of stuff. And so when I'm helping people decide how many carbohydrates are right for them, I want to know what their personality is like and what that even a small amount of carbohydrate will do to their bodies. And so I think about this for myself all the time. Like I'm fairly fit. I'm not an underwear model by any means, but like I feel really good and have good energy. I don't think there's a problem with consuming a small amount of carbohydrates. What I notice for myself, though, like if I'm walking through the neighborhood and maybe there's a fruit tree, they're exceedingly rare. First of all, they don't just grow everywhere. There's a few that I know of. If a piece of fruit falls on the ground and I choose to eat it, it's really good. Like the fruit is, natural fruit and small and not quite as sweet as what the softball size, apple that you find at Costco 365 days out of the year. My problem is if I eat that, I get really hungry in about 20 or 30 minutes. And it's not the same kind of hunger that I typically experience. The hunger I experience is kind of what I mentioned earlier, where my tummy just rumbles a little bit, and that's about the extent of it. I get very sharply hungry and I get a little moody, and then my cravings start to come back. And the next serving that I want is not another piece of fruit. Now I want a pie, or I want fast food or something that I would never normally crave. I just get a little anxious and antsy. And so I would love to think that I could moderate some of these carbohydrate foods, because I certainly don't think they're a problem for a lot of people. But I know for me, myself, they trigger cravings, and it's easier for me to just say, look, this is not my food. I'm just going to abstain from this and stay away from that. My brain works a lot better. I have a lot less cravings. And so I do better strict, but I always try to help people understand, are you better abstaining from these foods, or can you moderate some of these? I think a lot of people can quite well. I'm jealous.
Yeah, some people definitely can moderate. They go, I can have that like once a month and I'm good, and I just go on my life and everything's fine, right? But other people have one and their brain goes there and they want more. And there's always that discussion of the artificial sweeteners and the sugar alcohols, things like that. And it's always a hard one because it's like there's not a right or wrong answer. Like if it keeps you from eating high fructose corn syrup and sodas and all that stuff, okay, go for it. But if you can do without it, then do without it, right? And I think I think part of the reason the carnivore diet and the super low carbs diets work is that you don't have those temptations as someone who's eating low carb cookies and low carb ice cream and all that stuff every day.
Yeah. I love Dr. Bickman and how he describes it, where he'll look at his wife and his wife can have 3 bites of a pint of ice cream and put it back in the freezer. And he's just like, what planet are you from? Like, who are you? You can't do that. I can't do that. He says he'll finish his pint and then be looking at hers like, can I finish the rest of that? And
yeah,
I can certainly relate to that.
yeah. And I think the other thing is the more metabolically flexible you are, someone like you who's really fit, Ben Bickman, of course, doing that, like you can get away with a lot better than someone who's metabolically really sick with high insulin. Because that once your insulin goes up high, now you can't get your fat stores anymore, and you're hungry all the time. And so people get freed of that when they realize, like, yeah, I skipped lunch yesterday, and was like, I never thought I could skip lunch, and I did. I wasn't even hungry, so I just worked through lunch.
Yeah, I agree. I wish people would understand how easy that could be. And while we're eating so many of these ultra processed, highly addictive, absolutely delicious foods, it's hard to even imagine that you could go 2, 3, 4 hours without eating or needing a snack. I'm going to steal this from one of my favorite podcast guests, Aranda Wickramasinghe. It took me a while to know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, you learned her name, so you're going to use it.
Good. Exactly. He's in England and he's involved with the Public Health Collaboration, a really great guy from Sri Lanka. And he said, like, before he found low carb, hunger for him was a bully. And it didn't matter what he was doing, if he was working, if he was with his family or on vacation, the bully would charge in, shove him down, try to steal the change out of his pocket and like make him focus on the bully. Where now, eating low carb, hunger is just that friend that comes and taps him on the shoulder and says, hey, it's noon. We normally like hang out. Should I go? Do you want me to stay? What do you want to do? It's so much easier to say, you know what, I'm busy today. Let's do lunch tomorrow or whatever. The hunger just completely changes in that state.
Yeah. And what other things Casey, do you think are like help, like besides diet stuff, what else is helpful in the quest to better health? What I'm getting at is like doing fun things, sleep,
Yeah.
alcohol, whatever. Like, what are the things you think like are beneficial? Because some people go, look, I'm doing a perfect carnivore diet. And I'm like, yeah, but you're drinking like 4 bottles of wine every that night. That's not really going to help you, metabolically. So, what are the things or the tricks that you see with patients that you can use to a lever you can pull?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you're asking a personal trainer that question. So, of course, I'm going to say exercise. And I really believe in what Ben Bokikio talks about as far as strength training and helping people understand the mechanisms of why strength training works so well. And teaching people that if they can find a few exercises that they can do very safely with whatever equipment they have, whether that's a few bands or a full gym and everything in between. If you can learn how to do a few exercises in a really safe manner, and really learn how to push yourself and push your muscles to kind of a level of fatigue where they really can't do much more work, the metabolic impact of that is quite significant and can do a lot to really help people reach their goals. I think we're so conditioned, again, in this paradigm of calories in, calories out. And of course, if I want to create an imbalance of calories, I would be thinking, yeah, I want to go run. I don't want to lift weights. I want to go run as fast as I can for 45 minutes until this treadmill says I burned 500 calories. And then I'm going to go home and eat a bunch of salads and keep my calories really low. Versus, why don't we get you on a strength training plan and again get you some exercises that you can do safely with whatever equipment you have, whether that's $30 bands or again like a nice high-end membership to a gym or anything in between. Even body weight stuff and water bottles could be sufficient for a lot of people. And if you just teach them how to like safely challenge the muscles in a certain way, your body goes through a transformation. It can't help itself. It doesn't want to. Your body is really kind of lazy biologically. It doesn't want to expend more energy than it absolutely needs to. It would much rather sit around on the couch than push a boulder or do something that requires a lot of strength. But when you do that, your body has to go through the adaptation process of making sure you've got a decent amount of muscle mass, making sure your bones are really strong and thick, making sure your connective tissue, the supportive tissue in our joints, is really quite strong as well. That helps us with injury prevention. It helps strengthen the heart a lot more than I think people think. There's a lot of great research about strength training and heart health. It's quite interesting, even looking back on how we came to call cardio. Everybody thinks it's so great for the heart, but there's other things you can do that are arguably just as good, if not better. And that can be done pretty infrequently. If you know exactly how to push yourself, you can get away with strength training maybe once a week for 15, 20 minutes. You might not need much more than that to be able to create that effect and that impact. And I wish more people knew that. There's a lot of people in my industry in particular, they make an insane amount of money selling packages and workout programs and all kinds of exotic equipment and all this stuff. It's just it looks fun and sexy, and it's just a bunch of noise that we get. And yeah, during the pandemic, we've had to be really creative about how we work with people and train people virtually. I've trained people on trees and on banisters of stairs and all kinds of crazy places. I spend a lot of time in unfinished basements and garages and warehouses all across the valley helping people understand that. But once people get the hang of that, that is a real awesome complement to a low carbohydrate diet. When somebody's eating a decent amount of protein, they're doing some intermittent fasting, and they're combining that with some strength training in that way. Again, doesn't need to be very complicated. Certainly doesn't need to be a real time suck. Then that person can go out and do whatever they enjoy doing. Do you like to go on walks? Do you like to ride your bike? Do you like to paddleboard? Like, what things would you rather be spending your time on? Let's maximize the time doing the strength training. Let's get that out of the way, so then you can go do all the other stuff and do it with a better, a better energy, a better body, more strength, less injuries, to be able to enjoy that a lot more. So that would be my next thing that I would say is absolutely critical for people.
Yeah, I think that's so huge, and it was amazing. I remember when I first started getting into the low carb community in like maybe I don't know 2017, 2016. No one was talking about exercise. They go, just eat this way and you're fine. That's all you have to do. The exercise is like way overblown. It doesn't help. And I was like, this inherently cannot be right. And then Ben Bakikio comes rolling along. You come rolling along and go, look, I mean, when you look at the data, and Ben and I argued about this, you put on muscle mass, that's the biggest indicator of longevity. And it makes sense, like you're saying, these big muscle guys have a sink to store extra calories, whether it be sugar or fat, they can store it a lot easier and break it down a lot easier. And muscles inhibit, and it's amazing because I know you're looking at the VO2 max type stuff, and I'm looking at body composition stuff. And so I can see I have people come in. I have a lady, she's 314 pounds. Her visceral fat is almost non-existent, and it's all subcutaneous fat. So when I look at her lab panel, everything's perfect. Like absolutely perfect. I have 150-pound people that are like, you're looking like, oh my gosh, you're super sick. And so you can't just tell by looking at someone because we distribute our fat differently. But the bad one is the visceral fat, the fat around the organs and, internally. And that's the dangerous pro-inflammatory, atherosclerotic stuff. So yeah, exercise definitely inhibits that. And I find, and it really kind of stumped me because we're looking for weight loss. So if I have someone who's working out with you, putting on muscle mass, they're not gonna have as much weight loss on the scale, but their
Yeah.
body composition is changing dramatically.
Yeah.
And that's why the biggest losers, like you said, they don't have reunion shows because they were calorie restricted, working out like crazy. They had a huge cortisol response. And just like anything, I think, these even professional boxers who work out at a higher level or MMA guys, all of a sudden they can't make that weight anymore. And no one says, oh, I used to be at like 180. Now I'm going to 160. No, they're going from 160 to 180, like even though they work out like crazy, right? Because the body wants to hold on to that store of energy just
Yeah.
in case you starve yourself forever.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I'm working with somebody who lives in New Zealand, and she every single week when we do our checkups, she tells me to the gram how much she's either lost or gained in that week, and I just have to plead with her every single week, like it's just the scale. This is just gravity on the planet Earth. This isn't saying anything about your recompositioning. You're working on strength training. You're changing your diet. You're eating more protein. Like your body may be healing from a lot of things, and just because that scale isn't moving the way that you want, it's just saying that your gravity on planet Earth is not changing in that way. But unless you've got a good way to measure muscle mass, or you've got somebody, checking their waist circumference or finding other ways to determine whether they're getting to their goals or not besides the scale, it can be really tricky. People get really fixated on that. And so I think it's a tool that can be used, but it can really mislead a lot of people where they think they want weight loss, but what they really want is fat loss. We want to increase your lean body mass and keep that really, high as we possibly can, so that you feel good and you've got that good muscle mass and that good sink for glycogen, like you described. But we want to target that fat and get that out of there, especially that visceral fat that you mentioned. That is, like you said, very highly inflammatory. It's not inert. It's not fat that's just sitting there. It's doing some pretty nasty stuff inside the body, and we would love to oxidize it, burn it off, get it gone. And we just need to follow the right principles to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think, the more I see, the more, this muscle mass is such a huge deal because if I see someone with good muscle mass, I know their labs are going to look good. They generally do. If you have enough, unless you're really over the top eating terrible food, like really putting an effort in. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. And so, the way I learned this, one of my patients, he came in, he was 320 pounds with diabetes out of control. Everything was this guy was a disaster. In a month and a half, he lost 4 pounds, right, to 316, and he was happy as can be. He's off all of his meds. He's feeling great. His energy, everything. But in the same time period, and this is the opposite of what we normally see, his wife had lost like 38 pounds.
Wow.
And I knew he wasn't cheating. I'm like, how in the heck is this possible? It doesn't make any sense. I'm looking at the research, and I remember Dr. Sean O'Mara talking about a while ago, looking at this visceral fat and muscle mass, how they inhibit each other. I'm like, this doesn't make sense though. So, anyways, I measure. He goes, Doc, look, my shirt was like all the buttons were pulled apart. Now they're like, the shirt's loose on me. I have to get new clothes. Like with 4 pounds of weight loss doesn't make sense. But really, what happened is he put on a bunch of without really exercising, put on muscle mass because
Mm,
he had decreased his visceral fat dramatically. He lost 8.5 inches off his waist with 4 pounds of weight loss.
wow.
So when you see that, you have to go, okay, this happens, and it makes sense if you think about it from this standpoint of if you're a bear going to hibernate and you have to hibernate for 6 months, or if you're super stressed and you think food's going to be gone, your body's going to shut that things down and says, let's get rid of muscle. It's a detriment at that point,
That's
right?
right.
And let's
Yep.
put on visceral fat as much as we can so that you can sleep through the winter. So Arnold Schwarzenegger bear is not going to be able to, all that muscle is going to burn that visceral fat. So they can't. So that's a lesson for us. Like, okay, like put on muscle and burn the visceral fat, and you're metabolically healthier, right? And if
Yeah.
if if food runs out, then you'll be able to much better at getting food.
Yep, yep, exactly right. No, that's how our bodies are set up. That's why fructose is so bad for us as humans, is it literally programs us to seek more and more of it. And it stores fat. The liver stores, that fructose fat right outside the liver, and that's where we get that visceral fat that we could use in a winter if we had a winter, but nobody goes through a winter anymore because we're in this environment where carbohydrates and fructose are available everywhere all day every day for decades and decades. It's just, yeah, it's not the best environment. I don't want to miss something you said, because I really like that you said that he lost only 4 pounds, but he was also super happy about it. It's interesting when you reflect back on a weekend like the weekend that you and I just had at the Symposium for Metabolic Health. You and I are traveling to a conference that has 30, 40 amazing presenters, including yourself. And we're talking about a low carbohydrate diet. When you reflect back on most of the talks, weight loss and fat loss was kind of like this side note. You would have thought it would have been like the number one thing that we're going to a nutrition conference to talk about. And it's there and people mention it, but like we had a whole day where all we talked about was low carbohydrate for mental health. Like we're not talking about losing weight. For some people, it's like weight gain for anorexia nervosa and reversing bipolar and schizoaffective disorders. We saw the presentation with Lauren Kennedy West by Nicole Laurent, who's working with her, and how she's completely reversed her schizoaffective disorder. And like, it's cool that your patient recognized that I've only lost 4 pounds, but I hardly care because my life is improving so much. Not only did I lose so many inches, but he was probably feeling way better, snacking less, off the meds, like you said. These medications have a lot of side effects, and I don't think we talk nearly enough about the effect of some of these side effects that people go through. My first client this morning has, on his own, I obviously didn't give him any advice on this, but on his own a few weeks ago decided to stop taking his statin. And he was like, he told me today, like, I cannot believe the effect that had on me. I would rather take my chance and live this way than deal with some of the side effects. It was really impacting his brain, and he feels way better now. So it's really cool that your patient noticed that, yeah, I only lost 4 pounds. That might be really demotivating for somebody, but when you notice the myriad other benefits in low carb, like the fat loss is like the cool like side note.
Yeah, we got him off 6 medicines with 4 pounds
Wow.
of weight loss, right? Because he didn't need it anymore. His sugars dropped. Like you see it, you go, oh my gosh, I would show people, here's day one, here's 6 weeks later, and you look at his numbers, you go, that can't be the same person. But he put the work in and he did it, and he knew inherently that he was doing better. So he was happy as could be. And he knew because his clothes are falling off. Like that, those are markers we can look at and go, hey, your clothes are looser. Don't worry about the weight, right?
Yeah.
If you're getting smaller, like your patient, and this is what I always have to tell my patients, look, are your friends looking at you, or are they getting on the scale with you? Right? If you're putting on muscle mass, if you like you would say, if you have a choice of putting on 10 pounds of muscle or taking off 10 pounds of fat, you put on that muscle, and that's a long-term benefit, right? That's a long-term, that thing's always burning calories way more than what's going to happen if you're sedentary and doing nothing.
Yep. Spending or investing. The strength training is investing. The burning calories is spending. Which one would you rather do over time? And I'm stealing that phrase, Brian, by the way. Your friends are looking at you. They're not stepping on the scale with you. I'm going to use that. I appreciate that.
No, I think it's so important because if you're putting on muscle mass and you gain 5 pounds of muscle, like don't worry about it. Because we see it. As a matter of fact, you may find this interesting, but one of my patients, she had lost weight faster than anyone I've ever seen on a low carb keto, more of a carnivore type diet. And it was like almost like I'm not telling my other patients because they're going to get so mad at you because they're not going to like you anymore because it was ridiculous. And then she kind of plateaued out for a while, and family stuff and stress and whatever. And then she was having menopausal symptoms. She went on low dose hormone replacement, and she called me and said, and she's working with Leah, my PA at my practice, who's a hormone expert. So, anyways, she goes, something's wrong, doc. I've gained 10 pounds. I'm just like, getting flabby around the middle, not feeling great. And so I go, let's come in and do a body composition. So she had put on 8 pounds of muscle. 8 pounds of muscle, and the flab on the outside is because her visceral fat dropped dramatically. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. And so once she saw that, she's like, okay, I feel great. I'm happy again. Because when you lose that hormone effect, that's why postmenopausal women are at such cardiovascular, because instead of having it out in the breast tissue and the love handles and the butt and the hips, it goes all to the visceral fat. Because when your hormones drop, you start storing it in a different place, and you don't want to store it there.
Yeah.
So she's doing great, and she's been at the gym, and so things like that where you have to look at the whole picture and go, okay, let's see what's happening. Either you're eating cookies and not knowing it in the middle of the night, or you maybe are putting on muscle mass, or there's something other reason for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's such a great point. We just need to use the right tool for the right job. You mentioned measuring body composition. If somebody has access to a way to do that, whether that's DEXA or something like electrical impedance, like an in-body scale, like we use, it just does such a better job of telling the tale. And at the end of the day, I agree with people like Ben Bickman who say, just get a string, take one little simple piece of string, measure your waist circumference. That's an easy way to indicate that you are getting rid of that visceral fat. You can do scans also to see that visually. I know Sean O'Mara is a big fan of doing the scan to be able to actually like visually see it and not have it just be a number, but have his patients actually look at it so they conceptualize it a lot more. But yeah, you're right. We just need to make sure we're using the right tools for the job to help keep our patients and clients motivated.
Yeah, and I like that you say that because if you're the CEO of a huge corporation, your money's no object. You go, okay, I'll do MRIs, I'll do all these things. But a lot of us are saying, look, put a stringer on my waist, look at my triglycerides, HDL, like simple lab tests, we could tell where you are metabolically. You don't have to have all the fancy stuff done. But sometimes, I've always been intrigued about like doing the VO2 max and all these kind of things of looking at what are you burning as your fuel source? Is it that when you go down on your calories, even you slow things down more so than the calories you decrease and you're at a standstill? So I love that idea of saying, okay, let's shoot for this kind of range and not be too dramatic either way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it was really nice. Like now that we've started our own business, I don't have access to the same metabolic cart equipment that I had access to before. In fact, my program testing metabolism was shut down even before the gym was shut down because we knew there was a respiratory virus circulating and that involved standing next to somebody with concentrated respiration. So my program got shut down before the club did. But anyway, we don't have access to that anymore, but there are different proxies that you can use to be able to tell you like how you are burning your calories. And one of them to measure resting metabolic rate, a really simple one, is you can measure your temperature. When your body is doing, like we said earlier, when it's kind of lowering its own metabolic rate, one of the things that it does is it starts to lower its internal temperature. Temperature, measurement of heat is like burning calories. That's a suppression of burning calories that the body is doing to save itself. So you could get a $4 thermometer and check your body temperature. And if it's lower than it should be, you're probably suppress your metabolic rate. If it's higher, then you're probably burning more calories than is normal, which is good if you have fat to burn and have weight to lose. So yeah, just understanding that there are other inexpensive ways to check progress is really helpful.
Yeah, what other things do you think are benefit? Like, I'll just throw them out there, and you go, okay, yes, no, good idea, not a good idea. Like sauna.
We picked up a sauna 2 years ago from one of my clients who wasn't using it anymore, and I'm in it every single night for about 15-20 minutes. I absolutely love my sauna. I think it helps my sleep a lot. I think it's fantastic. Again, could be price prohibitive for a lot of people, but if you have access, I think they're awesome.
Yeah, I think if you can, I mean, I like it too. When I do my workouts at the gym, they have a sauna there and I use it and
Cool.
it's amazing. They have individual ones that you could just chill and do your thing, right? How about cold plunges?
I think they're very helpful as well. Again, something to kind of shock the system. Debatable whether it's better for your physical health or your mental health. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about how beneficial a cold plunge is for mental health. And so, again, that could be a low barrier to entry. I'm seeing a lot of cold plunges out there that are, very affordable and kind of more on the portable side. I've got a client that has a super nice one that circulates water at the right temperature all the time. So, again, could be price prohibitive, but if you live near a cool like creek or river or pool, you can always jump in. And if not that, you can always turn your temperature on your shower to be low.
Yeah, and that's it's an interesting thing because I read a lot about it, like cold plunges, because I tried to find every reason not to do it.
Yeah, me
I did it
too.
this morning right before we went on. You were training someone. I go, you know what? I'm just gonna jump in this dumb thing for, but it's amazing. There is data on it that what it does is it even if you're because what you and I are dealing with people who are highly stressed sometimes, or maybe type A and they got a hard job and they're like, look, I want to get the most bang for my buck to be healthy when I have this limited time. So there's studies showing that it does lower insulin, cortisol levels, stress hormones, because your body's like, if you, it makes sense. Like if you're in a cold thing that's like 48 degrees, your body's like, uh-oh, you got to survive this right now. I'm not worried about next Tuesday. I'm not worried about next week. we got to generate heat right now, right?
That's
So
right.
it puts your body into that state where it has to let the mitochondria be inefficient in that they're throwing off heat rather than making ATP and all these other things that they want to do. So it is kind of interesting, and they're both, the sauna and the cold plunges are both a stress on the body, but you get a compensatory calming effect. Just like exercise is a huge stress on the body. Like you're doing like especially if you're working out at a high level, but then afterwards you get this compensatory relaxation and calmness. And
Yep.
like you're saying, mental health, there's a lot of studies with sauna and dementia prevention in Norwegian countries, and so it's really interesting how much stuff these old guys have done over the years, and now you go, they were right all along, right? It wasn't just for sweating out some toxins. There's a lot of other physiologic effects of these things.
Yeah, that's such a great point. It just takes us, going through the process of creating, pills and potions and all kinds of things that make people, the food that makes people sick, and then trying to sell them a different solution when the solutions were right in front of us to begin with.
Now, what about grounding?
I'm sitting on a grounding mat right now. I'm inside.
I knew
Um,
the answer already, man. I know you chill and you getting in contact with the earth.
Yeah, I love few years ago I transitioned over to barefoot and minimalist shoes. I try to get my bare feet on different textures and the earth as much as I can. Was in the sand and the ocean in San Diego. I have to say I was very very skeptical about this, but this year I purchased grounding sheets for my bed. I thought this is a bit strange, but it came with like some 90-day guarantee, and I have to say whether it's placebo or not, I don't know, and I don't care. Like I get in my bed and I feel like a rock, man. I sleep so good, and the sheets themselves are actually plugged into the grounding outlet in my house, which I tested, and that's grounded to the earth. And so I'm literally like, it's like I'm laying on the earth as I'm sleeping. I love them.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it makes sense, and so there's so much more that is beneficial. Like like what you talked about. I was so glad you brought that up with that whole day, and they couldn't get all the lectures in, so the next morning they had a couple lectures too on mental health and getting your nutrition right. And it's especially makes me happy because back in the day, Tro and I had a discussion on Twitter, 6 years ago, talking about this, like what we were seeing in our clinics, and all these medical doctors were attacking me in particular, saying, "How can you even like you used to have your license revoked for saying food has anything to do with mood?" I was like, "Go to beach a bunch of hot peppers and see what that does to your mood, man. When you're on the toilet like all day the next day, or how many people would need an extra cup of coffee to get going? Like, at the conference, like one person said coffee might be a problem, the other person was the hero of the year, saying, "Yeah, coffee's probably good for you. There's benefits." So it's funny how, like we kind of don't want to hear what we don't want to hear, right?
That's
Like,
a
I
that's a
love my coffee though, but it's bad for me. What do I do?
Yeah, that caused quite a bit of consternation in the conference, and the one guy who disagreed with that opinion said coffee's probably okay. I thought everybody in the audience was going to throw him a parade and like carry him off the
Yeah, they wanted to
stage.
march him around, and he was the hero. Of like, man, smart. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
And the guy who said coffee might be an issue is like, no one wants to talk to you. No, I'm just kidding.
Get him out of here.
It might have been Chafee, so no one's
It
gonna say
was.
anything. They go, yeah, it's okay. But there are a lot of really bad, like some of the coffees are, they can have a lot of impure. And I think someone gave a lecture talking about how many tons of stuff they spray on vegetables and fruit. I go, gosh, dang it, that's another reason. Just that alone, I'm saying maybe that's what part of the reason the carnivores do much better. And there may be a lot with the gut microbiome and the, other hormone levels and things like that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thought, but yeah, I noticed with a lot of people on carnivore that you just don't have you have less questions. Is that the thing? Maybe, maybe not, but it's no question because you don't do it, so it doesn't really matter when you try carnivore diet. So yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, and there's so much. I mean, there's so much we have to learn. And what I love is generally people have an open mind. They go, what's working, what's not working? Changing gears sometimes. If you're working out super hard all the time and it's not working, maybe I need to cut back. Excuse me. Those kind of things. I think it's just so important to have someone like you who can say, yeah, what we're doing isn't working for you for some reason. Let's try another tact. Maybe we do more high intensity interval training, a little bit more weights, and seeing what works for that client or that patient to get them healthier.
Yeah, exactly. Again, as we kind of started this conversation, it might be unconventional and different than what other people think it might be, but we try to bring to their attention, like, how many times have you tried that conventional approach and did it actually work? Or did you end up, being hungry and quit the gym after 6 weeks and gained all the weight back and then blamed yourself for not having willpower when really it was just bad advice to begin with?
Yeah, and I think just trying different things. If it's not working, try cold plunging. Try this. I try all these things. If I'm plateaued out, I did OMAD for a year and I didn't lose any weight at all. I'm like, okay, OMAD's not for me. I'm gonna try something different, right? Change it up a little bit and try to figure it out. And it's not one size fits all. I think that's what we come back to, this
Yeah,
individualized care, and go, okay, you're in a little different situation than Paul Saladino or Sean Baker, right? And let's figure out how to make it work for your body and your body type. And
definitely.
and I think we carry with us the baggage of all these times. I mean, liquid diets. Like, I have so many patients did liquid diets, lost 80 pounds, gained back 110 pounds. They lose 50 pounds, they gain back 75 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
And it's so frustrating, but it's not their weakness. It's the problem is that your body wants to survive. So if you're giving it no nutritional value, it's going to say, okay, let's store more fat. It's a natural response to that,
Yep.
right? This yo-yo dieting type thing, rather than being consistent with what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good point. If you're the person listening, oftentimes we'll talk about like studies and randomized controlled trials and how strong is the evidence. But at the end of the day, it's, the individual who needs to make their call for whatever works for their bodies and whatever compromises they want to be making. Is it worth it to be more strict and feel really great? Do you not need to be as strict and you still feel really great? But at the end of the day, it's the individual that needs to decide what things do they incorporate in their life. And yeah, as fun as it is to talk about the cold plunges and the grounding and the saunas and the individual things that people like, I think overall the best thing that people can do for their health is try some type of low carbohydrate diet where they're really, really working on trying to get their carbohydrates as low as they can tolerate and see what it's like to transition over to burning fat. I think if you can get that one right, the others will tend to fall into place really, really well. There's lots of levers that work for different people, but diet and nutrition seems to be the biggest one that works for the most people that I notice.
Yeah, sometimes using that lever. And the other thing I just want to throw out quickly that I noticed too at the conference, some people were like, the last year conference or 2 years ago, they were really pushing a high protein, low fat approach. And then most of those guys they've backtracked and said, wait a minute, maybe we need to add some more fat into the diet. And it's interesting because I think some people are going to benefit initially, at least, of getting rid of the fat. And like, if you're eating pure protein for the short term, your body has really, like, they're not going to use that for energy. So you got to find your fat sources. But over time, that may be a decreased, diminishing returns, possibly.
I noticed that too. That was really interesting that kind of showed up several times in the conference that we were at. That yeah, it's like high protein is great, but we also need to remember that we need that protein with the fat, and people can play with different levels of fat in their bodies and even alternate like during the days, during the weeks, that kind of thing, and alternate. And both are important. But yeah, if you go a little bit too low in fat chronically, I don't think that's a great thing.
Yeah, and it may be, and some people, maybe I have another lady, she was 350 pounds or something, and we got her down a bit, and then she was kind of plateaued, and now she's lost, since I saw her last time, she lost 26 pounds. I'm like, what the heck difference? The only difference she really made, well, her life stress got better, and I think that was a huge factor. But she said, I stopped having my coffee with a bunch of creamer. I would do it like 4 times a day. And she said, I stopped eating at 4 o'clock. I ate like lunch and dinner now instead of I'm sorry, basically a brunch and an early dinner like at 4 o'clock. And she said, I don't eat after that. She said, my weight just started coming off.
Yeah. Yep.
Pretty amazing.
It is amazing. I noticed that a lot with cream. People, will add coffee to cream and think they're, only adding a little bit, but they're adding like half a cup and they're doing it several times in a day. And yeah, it's finding little things like that for that person. That doesn't sound like a terrible change. Definitely an adjustment that they had to make, but not an overhaul of their life, just changing the timing of the meals and eliminating one little thing. And that led to really, really great results. So I hope that provides a lot of help for people who are listening.
Yeah, and cut out stress. I mean, that's the other thing we didn't really get to, but I think we both agree on that. And so, Casey, what's life's best medicine for you, man? What motivates you? What gets you going? Or when things are like we get locked down and they shut your business down, where do you go to, recharge or find your peace?
That's a great question. I love it. For me, it's being out in nature. that really helps keep me grounded. And I've learned over the years that in the past, I probably would have said being out in nature means I drive to the mountains and I turn my phone off and I just try to like wander around and be, super zen and try to be a monk or whatever. And I found, especially through the pandemic, that I got quite sucked into the news cycle, and I, was starting to care about the case counts in some city in northern India and all the things that were terrible that were happening with the election cycle. And that was all going on. But every time I went outside, even just in my neighborhood or in my front yard, my front porch, like the birds were still the same. The trees are still growing. Like my cat comes out of the bushes and like she's still the same. Like just any which way I can just be outside. We live near a lake that I love walking around every morning. And if I can catch a sunrise, it's lovely. I don't get to do it every morning, but just finding ways to just be outside and connect with nature really helps remind me that, we're part of this life cycle and very fortunate to be, having this adventure that is life, and just remember to love the people around us and serve people and do the best we can. And that's about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, loving people around you, being kind, helping people, you're investing in other people and you're giving them your positive energy, not an excessive amount of energy, right? But the right energy, because I think a lot of people need that calmness and that peace. Some people just bring to the table this peace and not this over the top crazy. I'm gonna scream at you until you run 5 miles or whatever.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there's just people that I come across like Ben Bickman, like they have this energy, right? It's positive and they want to help people and they're trying to do the right thing. And so I think it's so important then. And the more grounded you are, whether it's grounding, like literally grounding, being out in nature, being calm, that you can be more healing. And that's the thing why I left the standard medicine model. Is like all these doctors are stressed out, tense, not sleeping, bitter at the world. And it's like they're supposed to bring health to other people and they're miserable and they have ulcers and they're, you know what I mean? The suicide rate among doctors is the highest of any profession.
Yeah.
And I go, man, we're supposed to be the healers, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we lose focus of that. We don't take care of ourselves. We're not sleeping, and all these things that we all know are bad, and they're doing it, right? And they're
Yep.
not addressing those things with their patients because they're like, well, if I'm sleeping 4 hours, it has to be okay. And so I think there's going to be a lot more doctors jumping ship and saying, look, let's work on working with trainers like you, working with nutritionists, people who can really help the patient from a root cause problem rather than saying, here's a pill, we're going to cover up all the problems you got, and it's tragic. As a matter of fact, I just got a text from my cousin last night, his brother, who like we grew up together, poorly controlled diabetic. I mean, this guy would drink a 2 liter of soda all the time. And he lives in Ohio. And, he had, in the last 6 months, he had both of his legs amputated, lost 5 fingers,
My
and
goodness.
dialysis and refusing dialysis. They go, he's got 24 to 48 hours to live. And he's like 5 years older than me, maybe.
Oh my
Go,
goodness. It's so sad.
right, man. This is all preventable stuff. Like, had he had someone like you in his life, or someone who could say, "Hey, let's just get rid of the soda," but it just tells you what the addiction is of this stuff, the sugar, and people just can't stop despite. Yeah, and then once you're at that stage, it's like you might as well enjoy your soda. Like it's too late. There's nothing
Yeah.
you can do. But it's just
Heartbreaking.
tragedy. So what I'm getting at is guys like you and maybe like me, we're helping people. Like their engine was going to blow up in their car, but we're changing the oil. We're helping them do tune-up. Say, hey, let's make sure we take care of all this stuff rather than doing these heroic things at the end of life, trying to keep you alive for another hour, right?
Yeah.
So we never
Yeah.
see people don't know. It's kind of like Scrooged or something. Like you don't realize where you're going. You don't know, but we know if your sugars are running 400. We know how it ends. It's just the way it is. So I just thank you for what you're doing and your positivity. And how do people track you down if they want to use your services online? Because I know you train online because you trained someone before we spoke.
Yeah, in your
Yeah.
neck of the woods in Arizona. Yeah, so the best place to go is just our website, which is myboundlessbody.com. They can find the very first thing you see there is a book now button, which you can click on and schedule a time to chat with us. We always offer a free 30-minute consultation for anybody, whether they want to talk about their fitness plan, their diet, any other health-related, fitness-related topics, or as I say on my podcast all the time, like even if it's just to say hello, introduce yourself, tell me about your life and yourself. We love connecting with people all over the place, and some people take me up on that, which is really great. So that's the best place. You can find our website there. It's called Boundless Body Radio. We do releases every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, sometimes on Saturday and Sunday. Definitely want to be tuning into that, because I am lucky enough to be hosting you very soon, and lucky enough to be hosting Linnell, your lovely wife, coming up. Very much looking forward to that. But the website's the best place. You can find all our social media and stuff there. Again, myboundlessbody.com.
Awesome. Casey, hey, thanks, man. Thanks so much for joining me. Taking a break out of your day. It's always great. I was looking forward to this. And everyone listening, there's tons of information here. And if you want more help along those lines, Casey's a great guy to do it. Also, we have Arizona Metabolic Health. I don't say that enough, but I'm having a blast. I had 3 new patients yesterday. I'm having a really good time in Arizona.
Great.
And so it's fun. And be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and take some of these things in. If you're struggling right now, life's not where you want to be, you're depressed, you're not happy with yourself, reach out, like, get some help, figure it out. And if you're struggling, find someone like Casey who can help you out. So have a great day, and thanks for listening. Casey, thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It's an honor.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify, or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.